Hello, everybody. My name's James, and for the benefit of those listening back to the audio, you're listening to Ask James, my regular YouTube live stream where I welcome questions from the YouTube community on anything football related. To timestamp this, it's just gone past 12 p.m. UK time on Wednesday, September the 24th, and as per usual, I'll be answering questions in order of submission, repeat/similar questions may well be skipped. I'll answer questions up until 1 p.m. UK time. Got nothing specific to announce, so I'll just get straight into the questions. Harry Baker says, "Hi James, I have a question for you that rhymes. Would you start Paquetá or Matata?" Doesn't really rhyme, mate. Paquetá or Mateta, it doesn't actually really rhyme. Looks like it should, but it doesn't. I wouldn't want to bench either, just in the sense that they're both on pens, right? So Mateta as talisman for Palace, whereas Paquetá is not talisman at West Ham, would give the benefit of the doubt to the Palace forward there for me, mate. Jiggins says, "Hi James, thoughts on Verts to Ndiaye from -4. Alternative is to play Verts, Lacroix in the same fixture, or Joachim Anderson away to Aston Villa and take Verts out next week. Thanks." I'm doing a bit of an analysis on Defcon so far that I'm going to release for advanced tier patrons tomorrow. And the Defcon numbers against Villa are specifically high, by the way, although there is an anomaly in there in the sense that I think it was 6 players picked it up for Brentford against Villa in game week 2. All reasonable. Probably Lacroix would probably be bottom of that list. I probably would still play Verts. The fact that obviously he wasn't even in the squad last night would suggest to me that probably a start at the weekend. Otherwise, I think they would have tried to build more minutes into him last night. Would I go Verts to Ndiaye therefore from -4? No. For 3, completely would understand that at this stage. From -4, no for me. So, and I probably would, if I had Verts, I'd probably play him again. Maybe it's delusions. CMP says, "Hi James, on free hit. Planning on Vicario, Tarkowski and the Senesi. Who would be your pick for third defender? Budget, no issue. Would you go Isak, thinking of front 3 with Haaland and Richarlison? No, I wouldn't go Isak. I think that he's clearly kind of in pre-season mode, isn't he? So, and Palace are strong. So, I think it's a strong possibility. Maybe dependent on the Ismail Assar news going into this week, but I would not be surprised if Crystal Palace beat Liverpool at the weekend. Yes, Jiggins would still start Verts under that circumstance. So no, wouldn't go Isak. In terms of your extra defender with Vicario, Tarkowski and Senesi, which is all perfectly reasonable this week, I would guess the Manchester City player, unless you intend to go Reinders, Foden, Haaland, or you want to punt Doku on a free hit or something like that. So probably Josko Vardiel as the most likely to probably deliver an attacking returns with their current lineup. I would guess will be very similar to what we've seen in the last 3 fixtures. Sokan1 says, "Cheers James for the great chip info. Saka or Gyökeres on a wild card?" I can totally understand that people won't want to go with both if they're on wild card at this stage. I think there's 2 sides to this, and it will come down to a little bit of preference. I think the structure might be a little bit better with Saka. We spoke a lot on that Chip Talk podcast yesterday about it kind of falling his way in the sense of the Palmer injury, which it's not been confirmed yet, I don't think, but we're anticipating he's going to miss a number of weeks. And also the Madueke injury obviously has been confirmed. I think, however, the template front 3 also will be Haaland, João Pedro, Gyökeres. So there's a strong case to say that unless you want double Arsenal defence, which is perfectly reasonable, of course, I might be heading that way in future weeks, that you probably will want both. In terms of which one first, like I said, I think it probably depends on the line. If you want to follow the template, it's Gyökeres. But for structure, you might be better off with Saka. If you want to get that to Palmer later on or stay around Fernandes level. I see in wildcard teams at the moment with like a top pick midfielder that's kind of in like the Semenyo range. I think that's a little dangerous. So little preference on structure would probably be Saka. That said, I will put together a draft on the weekend or on Friday and have a look with specifically all the picks that I'd probably go with at the moment. Billy Taylor says, yes, big man, I transferred out Bruno for Palmer last game week, which was absolute beep. I really don't want to reverse the transfer. Can you think of any better options for the next free 11.2 million to play with? So midfielder just for the next three. Okay, here we go. Pulls up planner. Rolling difficulty. Top of the shop. Next three are Tottenham and Manchester City on my planner. So Xavi Simons, potentially. Foden. I really don't mind that as a punt for 3 weeks, Billy. If you're looking specifically at that for 3 weeks, I think my choice on that would probably be Phil Foden. Comes with its own risk, obviously. Harry Baker says, also, for anyone worried about Sanchez being dropped versus Brighton, there is 0% chance of that after Jorgensen's shocking performance last night. I don't think anyone was particularly worried about that. It's a bonus thrown as the cup game obviously fell in midweek and he wouldn't have started last night anyway. So I don't think there was any concern about Sanchez not playing, mate. 1877 WWFC says, already done Murillo to Senesi or Senesi. I saw Neil Grover tagged me into a clip yesterday and he definitely pronounced his name Senesi. And Verts to Foden. Looking at -4 to remove Ekiteke or keep and play Dewsbury Hall. Sell next week for Gyökeres. Nothing wrong playing Dewsbury Hall this week. I intend to do that with my own team. So Land's fine with that fixture at home to West Ham. He takes a number of the set plays. West Ham have shown they're very good. Raise his eyebrows at defending them. So I'd probably leave that be rather than take the -4 this specific week, personally, considering Arsenal go to a Newcastle side who have kept 3 clean sheets in a row, and it's proved a difficult fixture for them. Though, I wouldn't be surprised if Arsenal went there and won at the weekend. CMP says, I'm keeping Salah after 3 hits. Spin my narrative. Haaland can't keep averaging more than a goal per game, right? Salah will heat up at some point and has more routes to points. What else gives me hope? Delusion. Maybe this is this back problem for Haaland. He's currently yellow flagged. Maybe it's legit, right? I think Haaland is the best captaincy for the next 3 weeks. And then it's a little bit determined by possibly where we're at with Chelsea primarily for game week 9. But you'd make a case for Salah at Brentford maybe being better than Haaland at Villa in game week 9. That might also depend on what we see from those two opponents between now and then, particularly in relation to Villa as a side we'd obviously ordinarily consider particularly strong at Villa Park. We get to see 2 home games from them in the next 2 game weeks. See how we feel after that. Haaland probably won't sustain over a goal a game. No, mate, no. It was this case this time last year as well. And obviously that went by the wayside pretty much when the European fixture started. However, I think as per Monday's pod, I think City stylistically is playing into his strengths a little bit better. He looks good. Not that he didn't this time last year, by the way. I think the fixtures are kinder now than some of the ones for City last year. There was some outstanding home games, but I didn't like a lot of the rest at this point last season, if I remember that correctly. I might not be remembering that correctly as someone who took him on and got away with it, right? So I think with Haaland, no, he's probably not likely to maintain over a goal a game, but we shouldn't think at this stage that if Erling Haaland started 38 Premier League games that he couldn't get 38 attacking returns across the board, right? Think of the assist even for Rangers that he put narrowly wide against Manchester United. The reality is on the data at the moment, Haaland could have even more, right? I mean, data-wise, he's outperforming everyone by such a distance. Salah has not looked at his best really for 6 months. I think it's fair to say. Now, Mo's Mo. Don't write him off. I'm certainly not doing that whatsoever. He looked fantastic against Atletico Madrid in the Champions League last week, by all accounts. I didn't watch the game. David told me it was great and Liverpool played really well. Some of these tougher games for Liverpool might even end up in him having a little bit more freedom, but then you also could have said the same about some of the games that they started the season with. So, comfortably Haaland for me at this stage. But I certainly accept that 3 hitters this week, that changes the path a little bit, because I think if you cover Haaland this week, you do feel that you can take him on for the rest a little bit. Dag Stenhag says, hello, James. Thoughts on bringing in either Foden or Richarlison for 3 weeks? What do you reckon the minutes will be for them both? So Foden should be largely okay, I think. I think we're looking at Pep's strongest team at the moment. It's very similar to the team that I put on the podcast during the international break when we went through best 11s of every side. And I put Foden in at that point and we didn't have any clarity on it in terms of him and Reinders in front of Rodri. So I think that's the preferred. Usual caveats with City in terms of rotation, etc. But it shouldn't be too bad, I don't believe, over forthcoming weeks. Richarlison, absolutely fine for Saturday. He won't start tonight, pretty certain of that. He should start against Saturday. But if he then starts against Bodo on Tuesday, it would have to put into question his start against Leeds in game week 7. And I would suspect at this moment that Richarlison probably would start at Bodo. Dominic Solanke could even be back in the squad this weekend, is the understanding at the moment. So the threat is there. Colin Moan is also there. He's unavailable tonight with a dead leg. Richarlison is absolutely safe for this weekend, I would believe. Beyond that, it's questionable. Alex MJ87 says, hi, James. Already used Wildcard. Haaland and Salah team. 2 transfers. Would you switch Paquetá to Reinders or hold and see what opens up next week with 3 transfers? Yeah, I'd probably leave that be. Again, you got a penalty taker there. I'd probably leave that be. I don't suppose anyone was particularly anticipating he'd score at Nottingham Forest. He obviously scored a bit of a long-range distance goal that Sanchez might have been a bit disappointed with in game week 2. Yeah, I probably wouldn't move that. The flexibility in the transfers would feel a little better for me. I would prefer Reinders as a pick, but I probably wouldn't bother making that move. FPL Borat says, hi, James. Are you worried about the team value you will lose holding your wildcard until 13-14? I'm on wildcard game week 8, but starting to panic as my team value is going down and I still have Verts, Watkins, Rogers. I'll recall a conversation I had with Suj, very similar time this time last season, and I said to him, I think it was on a Patreon podcast, I said, I'm dead for value. I'm in so much trouble here. And I didn't own Haaland, didn't own Salah. They were doing great. And even though some of the players I had were performing okay, didn't seem to be jumping up in value. But then Haaland calmed down a bit and the other players that did have started delivering properly. And I did suddenly shoot up on value. I was ahead of the curve on people like Palmer, Saka at that period, Ollie Watkins, another one. If your players do well, as a natural consequence, you will start seeing value. Take an example such as Semenyo. Points will equal value for you. Am I worried that I'll wildcard in game week 13 and not be sitting there with like 102 million in the bank? I'm sleeping absolutely fine, mate. I think I'll be fine. I think it'll be tight for money. But if I look at it now, I'll probably accumulate a little bit more between now and then. Haaland's going to accumulate some for me, clearly, I should imagine. So am I worried about it? No, it just means having to make sacrifices on choices. Let's not pretend that there's not a load of enabling Defcons that look great at the moment. I look at someone like Sepp Vandenberg. I've identified a number of times. Yeah, he can go in. It'll be about 4.3 and he'll be very competitive for Defcons over the winter period, I think. So am I worried about it? No, not really, mate. Harry Trimble says, hey, James, hope you and the family are well. Do you prefer Saka or Gyökeres for the upcoming fixture swing? Also, do you think Haaland is injured? No, I don't think Haaland is injured. Well, I think he probably did complain of a little bit of a back problem at the weekend. Am I concerned about it? No, not in the slightest. Not until Pep tells me something different on Friday. And there's every chance to just go for it anyway, because I'll look at it and think, if others hesitate, I'll still think it's a great option. And I do think that vice captaincy, something like Bruno Fernandes away to Brentford under the worst case scenario, is like, okay, I'm not going to end up with a completely dead triple captaincy. So again, highlighted yesterday some of the issues with some of the stuff moving forward. What we learned about the December TV fixtures in, I think, did I say before game week 8, will help us. But yeah, unless Pep says he's a major doubt, I'm highly likely still pulling the trigger on the triple captaincy this weekend. Saka or Gyökeres, I'm going to skip. Harry kind of covered. I think it would depend what you want from structure. Personal preference for me would be Saka. Just in the sense, I'm sitting there on Haaland and João Pedro. My other forward is Jared Bowen, who's not done great so far, but he's still hitting towards a ratio where he'll finish the season sort of 14, 15 goals. I can envisage a scenario where we hit game week 8 West Ham have a new manager. They've got 4 good fixtures. There's a little bit of a bounce, a wild card afterwards. I'm quite personally content to keep that. So Saka is on my mind rather than Gyökeres as it stands. Louis4554 says, best Man City defender for a 2-week punt before wildcard 8. I'm doing 8 Norwich straight swap, thinking O'Reilly or Vardiol. Yeah, just a little bit of preference on Vardiol purely as well. Obviously, Nathan Ake, it's not like Nathan Ake couldn't play left back, but I would anticipate O'Reilly probably does continue the games. But obviously, we've got Champions League midweek this week. Does that change things a little bit? City's spacing is good, right? Saturday Burnley, Wednesday Champions League, Sunday Brentford, and then obviously game week 8 is after the international break. So for the next 2 specifically, Burnley, Brentford, yeah, you're probably, as it looks, going to be okay on O'Reilly, but I'll just go for Vardiol personally. Spiky BXL says, no question, just appreciate for all you guys do. Still, for those who aren't supporting you financially, thank you, mate. If you want to support the show, it's www.patreon.com/planetfpl. And if you don't or can't, just smash the like on the stream, please, guys. Owen Wilson says, if you were wildcarding this week, would you go double Arsenal attack or defence? Defence, probably. But there's every chance if I was on wildcard now, I would maybe go 1 defensive, 1 attacking and leave it open. That's possibly the way I'd look at it. Again, I'll put something together and have a look at it for Friday. AT17 says, hi, James. As somebody who's used wildcard already, would you bring Isak now to replace Ekitike for the long term? No, I don't really think we should probably be considering Isak till after the international break, really. I don't think so. It's pretty clear at this moment he probably will start on Saturday. But I don't think even that is a certainty in terms of the way they're building up. There's kind of an assumption it'll be like Isak for an hour and then Chiesa for half hour, or maybe they move Mo into a more central area. Could it be that? Could we get something like Verts playing off the right at the weekend? Salah plays 9. Is that beyond comprehension? Chiesa plays the 9. Gakpo, I don't think there's an intention to move Gakpo off the left, but it's not like he can't play 9. I wouldn't be considering Isak personally at this moment. George Parakblau says, hi James, is Bruno worth 0.9 more than Bumo? More minutes, Defcons and Pens versus more attacking one. Pretty close between the two. I have no qualms whatsoever if people want to consider Brian Bumo over particularly the next couple of the weeks. I think what I would say is Bruno feels like a safer, longer-term hold at the moment because, in some of the more difficult fixtures, there's still bits that can be there, as we've already seen. So, yeah, longer-term, maybe there's a little bit of a preference for Bruno. But if it was going to be your difference between having Saka and not having Saka in forthcoming weeks, then I would happily go Bumo, right? That doesn't feel like a lot in it. Ultra says, hi, James. Do you think Saka will get enough minutes to be a good option over Arsenal's good fixture run? Yes. Yes, ultimately. Yeah. I don't think it's a case where anyone needs to steam in there. There's information that we can learn over the next fixtures against Newcastle and Olympiacos. And I'm not sitting there desperate to do it for West Ham either. I would like him for like the 10 to 12 run, particularly though. Elliot says, hi, James. Rank these moves in order of priority. Sanchez to Raya. Doesn't feel like one. Munoz to Gabriel. Also doesn't feel like one. Ekitike to Gyökeres. Feels like the best of that. Or downgrade Munoz to a 4.5 and Ekitike to Isak. So probably just on the sense of Ekitike being an immediate issue for you, Elliot, versus the others. Yeah, that move. FPL Borat would like everyone to smash a like. Thank you, Borat. I hope all's well. Matt Ridley says, hi, James. I have Watkins, Bowen, Gyökeres. If I sell Watkins, he's guaranteed to score. Bowen talisman fixture's very good after the next 2. Am I mad in not moving to Haaland? No. No, you're not, because it was my intention, right? But I knew on my way back from Brighton on Saturday with the Cole Palmer issue that I was done and I was fighting a losing battle. Remember, when I took him on last year, I said, at the likes of Palmer, Saka, Watkins being like really competitive from that perspective. And then I jumped on Mo like just in time, right? So this year, the competitiveness against him for captaincy we don't have much confidence in much else right now. Palmer was the one for me for like 6, 8, 9. And I thought, well, I can have Bruno at home to Sunderland in 7. I can deal with that. That was kind of my thinking. without Palmer, it's fighting a losing battle, I think, basically. So, no, as ever, play it your way, Matt. If you definitely, in terms of players you can have around it by not having Haaland, is much better. But we don't really have those players that we'd want to fit in under this circumstance, particularly performing. We can't look at Saka's and Fernandez's and Palmer's and Bumo's or any of these players right now and feel, oh, these are must-own. Like I said, a little bit of concern at the moment about certain structures I'm seeing. We say like Semenyo, the highest priced midfield player. But it's almost understandable at the moment. Sideshan FPL says, hello, James. Which goalkeeper would you start? Kelleher or Verbruggen? This week, Kelleher, probably of the two. Which three would you bench of the below? Cucurella, no. Porro, no. Gabriel, no. Goodmanson, Diouf, yeah, the last two, mate. Gakpo, Papsar against Wolves. Pap, obviously a little bit of information maybe to learn tonight in terms of there feels like there's an expectation that he might play tonight against Doncaster. That makes the weekend a little bit more questionable. It is a good fixture for Tottenham on Saturday. I'm kind of clear about that earlier in the week. But yeah, I'd play Gakpo, mate. Theo2303 says, hey James, what are your thoughts on Bruno as a pick? I can see a lot of positives, but with question marks over the manager plus him now playing as an 8 this season makes me unsure for his price. That's fair enough. That's fair enough. Again, as just said, I wouldn't look at it as like an essential. I think you can spin your narratives either way with Bruno. If he scores the penalty against Fulham, maybe people feel different, like, oh, I've got to have. If he doesn't have the penalty against Burnley, maybe people think, oh, it's been a bit shit. So I can see both sides of that. People have done some statistical work to actually show him playing in a deeper role doesn't seem to impact his returns, particularly. So, yeah, absolutely fine pickup. In a period where rotation is becoming a little bit scary, then he's secure. And it just go for him. That's other Manchester United players as well. But, yeah, I wouldn't say to, oh, you've got to have Bruno. No, not at all. The timing is right for the next two to hold on to something else maybe. But yeah, if I owned at the moment, he's a definitive keep for the next two, then maybe reassess. If I didn't own, I wouldn't be forcing myself to get there. Zem says, question, what Forest players can you see doing well under Ange? Elliot Anderson. Anderson would do great, but I think he's a great player anyway. He's likely to end up as a single pivot. I think he'll do well. If you're lacing this as a question from a fantasy perspective, Zem, he's a complete and utter void as far as I'm concerned. Following this weekend, Newcastle away, Chelsea at home, Bournemouth away, Manchester United at home. Okay, yes, there's a fixture against Leeds. Then they go to Liverpool. No, it's a complete void until we see any more. And I think most people who own Forest assets will want to sell after this week. FPL Ishak says, hi James, hope you're well, mate. I am, thank you. Hope you are too. Alfie A says, on Wildcard, which of these defences do you prefer? Raya, Gabriel, Tarkowski, Senesi, Anderson, Richards, or Donnarumma, Gabriel, Senesi, Anderson, Rodon? So what would be great, Alfie, from that perspective of the question, because I've got to read all those names and remember it, is we're basically saying, so Senesi and Anderson were in all of them. So was Gabriel. So basically it's just Raya, Tarkowski, Richards versus Donnarumma, Saliba, Rodon. Probably the Gabriel Tarkowski one, mate. Eddie R says, hey James, free transfers, 1.8 million in the bank, probably wildcard 13. Who would you go for out of Reinders, Semenyo, Xavi Simons this week to replace Yuri Tielemans? Also, what do you think of starting Mateta this week? Definitely. In most scenarios, we'll just play Mateta. Reinders, Semenyo, Xavi. Reinders, decent hold for the period that you're looking at. Xavi Simons could be great. It's going to be a little bit dependent on where he's going to play. Don't think there'll be any clues from that tonight. There is a small chance he plays the 10 position, but then that would make me questionable whether he then plays Wolves Saturday and then Bodo Tuesday. So I'm kind of hoping he doesn't start tonight. Or if he does, that it's restricted minutes, 45, 60, something like that. Yes, I'd like to see him in the 10 position. Ultimately, if you want to buy Simmons, it feels like it's got to be now because of the next couple. You could then make a decision maybe to move that on. That said, time is kind of the essence on Semenyo as well. And I still think he's got a great fixture this week. And that is the safest pick of the lot. I would put him in personally. It's Semenyo. Chad Maximus says best Spurs midfielder. Well, that said, if I had to buy one right now, it would be Simmons. My personal take is, and again, I haven't looked at it yet, but when I put together the draft on Friday for a wild card, I don't think there'll be a Tottenham attacker in it. I think the next two are really good, and then I think it quickly goes downhill and gets pretty rough quite quickly. And so I'd probably have a look at it. I have real concerns for people. I've spoken about this already this week. Real concerns that there are a number of teams who have a really good couple of fixtures. Tottenham is one. You can make a case for Manchester City being another. Manchester United is another one. Bournemouth is another one. Aston Villa is another one. They all have a really good couple of fixtures, and then bang, it turns quite rough. And I wouldn't want too many of those players, actually, which is why I actually think it's quite an awkward time to wildcard. But I'm seeing some drafts out there that look great, and I certainly understand the idea around Haaland, City players, getting the right Defcon players in. I get it. Owen Wilson says, would you start Mateta or Dewsbury Hall? Mateta, mate. King of Mandalore says, bench 2 of Stack, Casado, Senesi this week. Casado should be good for Defcons, particularly when we look at Bergvall and Bentancur picked him up against Brighton last week. So I would expect him to pick them up. Stack against Bournemouth, not so clear, but it's a home fixture and those are not his only avenue to points. Senesi on the fixture at the moment, I think you would want to play. Subject to other defensive choices, maybe. Yeah, I would probably, on the fixtures this week, go Senesi and Casado. Close that, though. Algot says, hi, James. Thinking about transferring Gakpo to Rangers this week to then make Paquetá to Saka in 7. Is it worth doing, or should I wait and just play Gakpo against Palace? No, actually. I think I quite like the set of that, Algot. Seems like a very reasonable plan to me. The only advice I'd truly probably give on that is don't rush for Saka. And wait, I think you do want information from the Newcastle and Olympiacos games before you make the investment. JP says differentials on wildcard this week. Well, depends. Define differential, right? So Senesi is in not that many teams, I don't think. Yeah, it feels like you look on socials and it looks like he's in every team. So that needs a bit of a definition. But on the face of it, I would say Foden, Simmons, Illiman and Dyer, quite popular, and I understand that at the moment. Bumo. But again, these players all fall into that category that I said, that it's going to maybe turn quite nasty quite quickly in a few weeks. I probably wouldn't consider the Bournemouth differentials at the moment. I just think it is Semenyo. Yeah, from those players that I said, I think if you want to look a little bit kind of longer term, don't laugh, Jared Bone. Owen Sinclair says, hi James, if Haaland is injured, what would you do on wildcard? Get someone else. I would put a forward in there and leave the money. If I was on wildcard and Pep definitively said he's out, definitively for this weekend, I personally would be thinking, right, I want to take him on. Under that circumstance, Foden and Rangers, I think, would definitely go in. To be like, right, I got a little bit of City coverage. That's great. I'd be very tempted to leave money to go to one of Haaland or Salah, either Haaland next week or maybe back for Salah in 9, and look at a few players that would maybe kind of fall into that short-term category where I'd be like, yeah, definitively one of these is moving on. So maybe if you wanted to set it definitively for Haaland to get him in next week as an example, maybe that's the sort of circumstance where, based on what I said, Richarlison would be good for this sort of week, right? But I wouldn't close the door. I don't think. I'd be wanting to leave that door open. And it goes back to what I'd said on the stream last week and on Black Box with Az about, maybe wait till you activate. Now, I've not waited to buy Haaland. I bought him early because I'd seen enough Sunday and I wasn't particularly concerned. And I knew what Pep said after the game before I bought Haaland, and I'm pretty sure, mate, that he's going to be absolutely fine. If he's not, I would probably, if you're on Wildcard, I'd leave the door open. John Ijugru says, Ndiaye or Kudus for the next 3. And Ndiaye goes to City in 8 is a little off-putting. Ndiaye, we've seen a little bit of Defcons from him recently, creeping in, which gives a kind of another layer of returns for him. I'm actually a little bit surprised that Kudus hasn't had anything yet from that perspective, because I think he's quite capable as well, actually. Next 3 specifically, I maybe would go Kudus, actually. I mean, West Ham this week really appeals. Then Palace at home never feels great, then City away. Whereas Tottenham is Wolves at home, Leeds away, and then maybe Villa at home. Now, a little bit of a bigger chance of rotation for Kudus, but fitness level's probably the best in the squad at the moment. Certainly at least out of the attacking players. So I think he'll continue to play, personally. So on that circumstance, just on that specific, I probably would go Kudus. Jerry Domiu says, hello, Jimbo. Since I'm wildcard in 6, is Porro still worth keeping with how good Spurs fixtures are from 6 to 9 and how improved Spurs defence is under Frank? I would prefer that you save the money with Romero at the moment. There's a couple of reasons for that. The biggest one is the potential for rotation now that Destiny Udogie is back. I don't think we can be totally shocked, and it might be in Bodo next week, right? It might be Porro just gets his break tonight, but I don't think we can be particularly concerned. I don't think we can overlook the fact that it could be Spence right back, Udogie left back almost in any game as just a little bit of an act of rotation. Romero is not going to get rotated. If Tottenham rotate a centre back, it'd be Van der Ven. So I would prefer at this moment that you went Romero. He's looking a threat from set plays. He's got a little bit more potential with Defcon. He had a monster kind of Defcon return at Brighton at the weekend, although I did explain the specifics of why that happened, particularly in that game on Monday's podcast. So I would be going Romero at this moment. When I put that draft together for Friday, Romero is the most likely Tottenham name in that. Matthew Archer says, hi James, if on Wildcard, would you rather a 5 million midfielder and a 4 million defender, or would you take a 4.5 mid and a 4.5 defender? Well, it probably depends how much I want to use them. So if we use just Romero, he might have already gone up, but kind of in that valuation, like a Romero and a Estev feels pretty safe. If I've gone for like a 4.5, like a Senesi Anderson, and then I've got, say, Josh King, like how comfortable am I playing King? Don't know at the moment. Worth noting that Kevin picked up a shoulder injury for Fulham last night. We don't know the prognosis of that as yet. But that 4.5 defender, let's say, okay, Senesi's gone up in price now, so it's probably a bad example. Van der Ven's also not a good example. 4.5, good example. Both of them have already been eaten into, haven't they? Okay, let's just say you were going with a Senesi just for argument's sake, so I don't get bored on this stream. There still will be fixtures you're not going to feel comfortable. You're going to feel comfortable starting him in game week 10 away to City as an example. Josh King, admittedly, has Wolves at home that week, but we can't know now if King's still going to be in the Wolves team, Fulham team, when they play Wolves at this moment. So I'd probably prefer the 5-4 set. The 5 probably won't get rotated much. The 4 offers us cover. I've just realised I misread the question. It's a 5 million midfielder, isn't it? Sorry. 5 million midfielder. So Stack or Dewsbury Halls? Yeah, again, it's the same thing though, isn't it? Neither, particularly. I suppose for me, yeah, probably like a Dewsbury Hall and an Estev combination would probably be it for me rather than a King and a 4.5 defenders. The fact that we're struggling for 4.5 defenders to think of probably adds that in. It's also the case to go 4.5 mid, 4.0 defender and just spread some money and get something else up. Sorry, I misread the question, mate. Reese Ferguson says, hi, James. Hope all is well. On Wildcard, Reinders and Dye on Minter. Also, who do you anticipate being more prolific for United going forward? Cunha, Bumo, Bruno. Prolific in terms of goal scoring could well be Cunha, but it feels like the one that you probably can't quite go for as yet. In terms of the other players, if I was on Wildcard at the moment, I'm pretty sure Reinders would be going in as a first priority. Ali says, Isak or Gyökeres on Wildcard? Gyökeres. I wouldn't look at this week, just look at the next 2, first and foremost. Then Gyökeres fixtures carries well. So Gyökeres for me personally. Chris L says, good afternoon, James. Thanks for the quality content. Does the Haaland yellow flag put you off using the triple captain? This bit I've covered, so I'm going to skip. And for those joining in late, ultimately, until Pep actually says something to give me genuine concern, no. I'm pretty sure that it was almost just explaining away the fact that he wasn't going to play at Huddersfield on Wednesday, which we'd all anticipated anyway. So, no. Not concerned till I hear something more from Pep. If it's genuine concern, then can back off, potentially. But as I said earlier, I'm probably still going to do it. Next up is Andres Svishoshki. Sorry, I've definitely butchered that, mate. Hi, James. Great job. Petrovic and Rogers. Dell. Donnarumma and Bumo. Cunha buy. What's Dell, mate? Dell? Sorry, I'm going to have to skip because I don't know who that is, mate. The Swish says, hi, James. What do you think about Foden's X-Mins in the next 4 game weeks? When you're predicting any Manchester City player, truthfully, over kind of a sustained period like this that also includes an international break where it's not beyond comprehension that he even gets a rule recall and plays a couple of games for England, really difficult to say, right? I'll tell you what I highlighted in terms of concerns as per yesterday's Chip Talk podcast. So as already said, the space in between now and the international break I think is pretty good. Huddersfield tonight, he's not going to play. Burnley at home Saturday, good. 4 days to Monaco, 4 days to Brentford, perfect. Perfect spacing for City. Couldn't have it better for the game week 6 and 7. Game week 8, they play Everton at home. Then they play Villarreal away on the Tuesday. There's then a 5-day gap to Aston Villa. The following weekend, they don't play Bournemouth till the Sunday. And this is going beyond. But it's just explained there's a Carabao Cup tie in the midweek in between. Okay? Where highly likely they'll obviously play on the Wednesday night. He'd probably get rotated for that. So, the alarming one is maybe Everton at home or Villarreal away. Now, if he doesn't go on international duty, there'd be no reason to think he don't play against Everton in 8. Then he maybe doesn't play at Villarreal. It might work out really nice for you, but ultimately, it's a Manchester City player and Pep might change his mind. Savinho is returning towards fitness, for example. What if Pep wants to set up with Gonzalez alongside Rodri? And be a little bit secure and free up Reinders a little bit more. I would say, on the face of it, it should largely be quite good. I presumably don't need to explain the risk attached to that, right? Jerry Damayu says, if you have an attacker playing elite defences like Arsenal or Spurs or Liverpool, do you bench them home and away against them or start at home and bench away? So I'm assuming this is obviously it's got to be a fancy question. I mean, certainly let's take a Mateta, right? Because that's an example that's come up a few times. I certainly wouldn't dream of leaving him out against Tottenham, mate. No way. Liverpool at home would want to play. We've seen enough from Liverpool games that suggest that there could be some joy there for Palace at the weekend, as I've already said. I think they could get a good result. Liverpool way is a bit different. Arsenal way is a bit different. Arsenal at home probably play in a case like Mateta. Now, if we're talking like more of a, I don't know, Calvert-Lewin price range, then yeah, okay, it's more about comparing with your other players. Generally speaking, if you've got a good talisman forward like that, you should play in most games. Most games. Definitely wouldn't be leaving out against Spurs, Jerry. I'll assume you were taking the piss there, mate. If you weren't, I'd reassess that. Joel Tartaglia says, hey mate, hope things are going well. Got 2 free transfers, Verts and De Kuiper to Senesi and Bumo. Already done it, just wanted to say much love for all your work from Australia. You've already done it, but you put a question in, so it's nothing for me to say, Joel, other than thank you. I hope all's well in Australia and good luck, mate. Mike Parsons says, hi James, hope all is well. I have Eze, is he a hold? Yes. Yes, he is. I think... Look, he obviously didn't start the weekend. A little bit surprising. I spoke on Monday's pod about why I think Trossard was given a nod. It's very conceivable that we're sitting here this time next week. People have wildcarded. Something goes wrong with like an Dyer gets injured or something like that. It's like, where to go? And the flavour could well be Eze. Really could be. So, yeah, I'd definitely be holding that. I would have a consciousness that I might not have one of the best I kind of think there's the 4 standouts in terms of security and factoring in rotation. Gabriel, Saliba, Saka, Gyökeres, right? So Eze's not any of them, but it doesn't mean that he can't offer you great value. And I think he could be someone, if he has a good week, that people were really interested in this time next week. So it's at least a hold for this moment. A says, hey, James, who'd you sell Paquetá for? I wouldn't necessarily at this moment. Penalty taker and then some amazing fixtures coming up. If you don't know, I wouldn't. Sean Limbrick says, hello, mate. Hope you're well. I'm looking to do Salah, Gu, Sells, Concert and Rodgers. To Saka, Gyökeres, Donnarumma, Gabriel and a 4.5 million midfielder. Let's just put Josh King in there for the moment. Keeps wildcard in my pocket a while longer. Thoughts? So what you haven't specified there, if these are free transfers, Sean, or if it's like a minus 16, mate. So you're never going to get the thumbs up from me, particularly on a minus 12. It's not to say they can't be done, but I'm just never going to give the go-ahead for it. If they're all for free, then okay. But I also think the Arsenal players can wait a week, would be my take. I mean, bringing treble Arsenal for this week. It is part of a wild card and you want to set better. Okay, I understand that sort of thing. Can't really answer, Sean, because I don't know if these are free or there's hits or... But I would say that most commonly the Arsenal players should wait a week, right? Is there ways that you can do these transfers now and set it for the Arsenal players? So probably is, isn't it? Maybe none of them. Maybe sells the Donnarumma even doesn't work. But therefore, I'd probably just leave it be. Villa's fixture's okay, right? Salah. Okay. Go, not going to play. Presumably your 4.5 mid wasn't going to play. Sells, good fixture this week. This feels like a next week conversation to me, Sean. Awood says, afternoon, James. Excited to see Janai and Luca tonight. Yeah, I am. I don't think it's beyond possibility that Janai Byfield starts, actually. So for those unfamiliar with Janai, his centre-back might even still be 16. I think it's 17. Extremely highly rated. He's been on the bench for a few games already. Ben Davis has been ruled out. It would have been a shoo-in, obviously, to start tonight. I don't think it's beyond possibility that he starts. I think he could. Because you could still pick a backline of something like Spence, Danso, Udogie and still have quite a bit of experience around him, right? So I think that's a possibility. Luca won't start. Luca Williams-Barnett is, I don't want to say of the Mikey Moore mould, but Luca is more definitively central already. He's got a really good creative eye, really good goal scoring prowess, considering he's more of a 10 than a 9. And yes, very much excited to see him. He looks, I can't think of the right term, a bit scruffy. I don't even mean it harsh. I'm not saying he's a bad looking bloke or anything. He just looks a bit scruffy with his hair and stuff. Like he's not bothered. He sucks down and stuff a little bit. Like he's a very talented boy. Yeah. So if they were both in the team tonight, I wouldn't complain about that at all. So yeah, I think there's honestly a genuine chance Janai might start. And Luca, I obviously hope that we could get ourselves in a position where he can have half hour, 20 minutes at the end would be great because he's doing ever so well at the moment. Next up is, I'll let you know when I find my place in the chat. Taylor, would you have any hesitation triple captain Haaland? I've covered that, mate, so I'm going to skip. Greg says, afternoon, James. When you wildcard, do yourself killing a striker slot with a 4.5 million forward? No, not at all. Purely for me as well. I'm obviously going to be wildcarding like going into December, right? So don't want any dead players, mate. Not for Christmas. No. King of Mandalore says, is Minter a genuine option on wildcard this week? Looks sharp this season. Fixture good beyond this week, but usual concerns around Brighton rotation. Well, I'll kill that a little bit for you. Timing's doesn't feel right because obviously to go to Chelsea this weekend. But yeah, I don't mind it. And actually, I think him and Mitoma's minutes are way more secure than they have been historically. I don't really see a like for like in the squad in terms of Brighton's wide players at the moment. So yeah, I think Minter's going to play some really good minutes. So I don't mind that. Just timing feels a little off. Hillbilly says, hi James, would you do Munoz to Senesi as part of a gradual pivot towards Defcon defense? What'd you get Munoz for in the first place? Just take a step back. It's not criticism. Just take a step back. What did you get Munoz for in the first place? Didn't Munoz score against Liverpool in Community Shield? Maybe. Or assist? Can't recall. Didn't watch the game. Everton, Bournemouth afterwards. Yeah, then Arsenal. Then their fixtures are really good again from game week 10. It's kind of just a little bit of pain. Really, the Arsenal game week 9, like, I wouldn't be that bothered this week. We also have to think with Defcons, again, it's not a criticism of anybody, because when you're seeing trends at the moment like Senesi's and Tarkovsky's picking them up every week, Anderson, I think, has had 4 in a row, you're like, I can see trends. But they won't necessarily be every week. What I would say at the moment is the move into the Defcons, as it looks right now, looks right. However, I do think Munoz is a rare outlier, in the sense we should remember why we've all kind of wanted him, why we said in pre-season he's probably going to have to be 5.5. They're exceptional defensively. Okay. He has a great engine. So if he plays in a Conference League game, with him, I still wouldn't be particularly concerned about a rotation element. There is, however, I think, a real danger with the game at the moment that fullbacks are pretty much nearly killed off, beginning to feel that way. Because in nearly all scenarios here where you've got an attacking fullback, Munoz is a bad example because he's extreme as a wing back, right? I can't really give justification for anyone at this moment to pick Porro over Romero or Truffert over Senesi. Everton's a bad example because the fullback's not great from offensive output anyway. But even like with Newcastle at the moment, he's probably Dan Burn over like Livramento or Lewis Hall once he gets back in the team. Nearly all the cases at the moment point towards the centre-back, unless you've got an exceptional goal-scoring, not assisting, goal-scoring fullback/wing-back. So let's take a good example of someone who actually has impressed in a bad team so far this season for fantasy. Let's take Diouf at West Ham, right? So he's got incredible delivery on him, okay? Probably he's going to get you an assist every 5 or 6 or so, probably on average, right? Wouldn't be surprised at the end of the season, sitting here, he's got 6-7 assists or something, right? Right, what am I going to do that for when I know that there's another defender, very similarly priced, who's going to hit Defcon 14, 15 times? Why am I going to do that? Doesn't make sense. So I get that. So I just mentioned Munoz here as an outlier, right? Because Munoz is the best, probably, in the league in terms of expectation of actual goal scoring from that position, because he's so advanced, right? So I wouldn't rush to sell Munoz personally if I was there, but I certainly understand the principal idea of the pivot. Pivot! That's one for the Friends fans. OG FPL says, hi James, had 3 free transfers, already made Salah and Ekiteke to Haaland and Reinders. Do I make Gakpo to Saka or roll the spare transfer and wait for 7? It feels easy to roll, mate, here. Cal says, afternoon James, would you go Donnarumma over Raya and Wildcard 6? Raya ownership getting very high, and impressed with Donnarumma. He's made a good start. Both very secure for minutes. I think it's worth saying that when we compare the Arsenal defenders and the City defenders, certainly in terms of the centre-backs, again, we can feel a bit safer. Calafiori, if you played every week, would be someone else that falls into that outlier in terms of attacking potential for actual goal scoring, by the way, to go back to the previous question. Probably still Raya for me. My priorities would just normally be Arsenal players. Reasons not to would be that I want 3 different Arsenal players, so ultimately Raya. Bandy Maggi says, I was surprised at how Vardio didn't foul Martinelli. Every natural centre-back fouls and gets sent off. It was such a fumble in my eyes. Do you know what? I'd have to look back at that. It's not something that occurred to me. I'm not suggesting you're wrong in any way. But actually, yeah, it probably would make sense, isn't it? Particularly with the Carabao games this week. Just take the red card with a couple of minutes to go and know that you'll serve unless it's serious foul play, serve a 1-game suspension in the cup. Yeah, pretty good point, that. Not considered that. Russell Baker says, hi James, congratulations on getting Frank. Cheers. I get Frank a lot. Sounds you'll be coached as well as Palace. 4 losses in 36 games. I'm thinking Saar and rotate Mateta out. He was in second place behind Haaland in expected goal involvement on Wildcard 6. Yeah, as I said, look, with the Palace assets, I wouldn't be that particularly scared about this weekend. Again, it's Liverpool, best team in the league, right? But I got a feeling. Woohoo! 4 losses in 36. Is that right for Palace? That's extraordinary. I know it's like 17 unbeaten. Amazing. Freddie Power says, hi James, do you think Emery's in any trouble getting sacked, or does he have enough credit in the bank? Seems many of the Villa players seem disinterested massively off it. I will refer back, Freddie, to the conversation I had on Monday's podcast, not to just repeat myself, and also plug tomorrow's Clash to Correspondence, which is Aston Villa versus Fulham with Lee Jackson and Lewis James, where no doubt we will cover that in a little bit more detail. Mark Nash says, Senesai sounds like a Japanese samurai character from a 70s TV series. Prashan Hajani says, hi James, is it better to take a -4 to sell Ikiteki to Richarlison or play Richards versus Paul? Most likely free hitting in 7. Oh, okay, so that kind of changes the game if you're free hitting in 7. I'd probably hold him, weirdly. Yeah, I can't say... I'm just trying to visualize for you here, mate. I'm trying to visualize who would be the bigger headache for you in game week 8. Is it Richarlison or Ekiteke? It's probably Richarlison. Also consider he's probably gone to play for Brazil. Yeah, I'd probably leave that be, I think. Anna says, hello, James. In contrast to Triple Captain Robot, been thinking about Mo versus Nottingham Forest. He'll probably rest in the international break and be ready for a high line Ange. Why would he rest in the international break? I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just trying to... Is there an agreement in place for something between Liverpool and Egypt ahead of game week 12 because he's going to AFCON? I'm not saying that there isn't, by the way. But unless I know that information, that seems a little strange to me. I don't know Egypt's fixtures over that period as well. More the point of fear maybe with that one, I'm just double checking on afterwards, is it's not bad. 4-day turnaround to PSV, which is at home in the Champions League afterwards. Then there's a real kind of run afterwards that's a headache. So yeah, look, either way, you wouldn't have minutes concern about Salah playing Nottingham Forest in game week 12 unless he was injured. Essentially, there would be, I don't think, any reason for concern on that particular fixture. So yes, all I'd say is it is based on an expectation that Ange Ball will be Ange Ball, and it might not. We didn't see Ange Ball at Arsenal. I know they got well beat, but we didn't see Ange Ball at Arsenal. Might there be lessons learnt from the batterings that Tottenham took from Liverpool last year? Who knows with Ange? So yeah, look, could be great. Could be very reasonable. It may be a better option than some of the fixtures afterwards look great. Ultimately, analysis will probably be decided by how well Forest are doing, right? Prajan says, thoughts on 3 at 7. I have no Arsenal, no United cover. We did a chip pod yesterday, Prajan, so I'm going to point in that direction where it was covered. Verticus says, hey, mate, if Haaland is fit, would you sell Wood or Watkins? Cheers, pal. I mean, he will be fit. I'm fairly certain about this, guys. Wood or Watkins? Answer might lie in Wood's minutes versus Forest tonight. I think ultimately Sunderland have done better than we could have expected maybe when we looked at these fixtures in pre-season. Oh, Sunderland at home. Yeah, probably Wood. If you can afford to do either, Wood, and then also Watkins at similar value to get to Gyökeres when you want to do that. So that probably makes sense. Aidan says, hey James, wildcard this week. Should I continue with double Spurs defence or getting 2 attacking players for the next 2? You think there's 2 good Tottenham attacking assets? Okay. Again, looks great for the next couple. Then it swings. It don't look great, mate. Really doesn't look great after the next couple. Arguably, each fixture gets harder and harder. Wolves at home, Leeds away, Villa at home, Everton away, Chelsea at home. It's like each fixture gets harder for Tottenham. Then is United at home, bit easier. Then is Arsenal away. Is Newcastle away, cut after that. Yeah, this wildcard, guys, always play it your way. You want to attack real short-termism? Please be my guest. The chances are you're not wildcarding again for about 25 to 28 game weeks or so in most scenarios. I'd be considering that. It doesn't mean you can't. Just be careful, because it's not just, Tottenham have got 2 good fixtures and I'll move on to someone else. There's so many other teams, like I said, with this scenario of a couple of good games, bang, it changes. I wouldn't be overcommitting to Tottenham at all. I think, as said, when I put that draft together on Friday, Romero, I think, will probably be in it. And subject to what I look at and feel, Simmons might be in it. Otherwise, no. Next up, we're a minute to 1. So I'll tell you what I'm going to cover off. Next up is Righty FPL. I'm going to cover that down to Omar El Aradi. I can say you're all going to get quick fire answers. Apologies, but I suppose it's better than no answer. Righty FPL says, I still have wildcard in pocket, 2 free transfers. Lucked in Haaland and João Pedro. Structure at start of the season. Have a Palmer problem. Mids of Rangers, Bruno, Dewsbury Hall, Semenyo. Swap to Saka and avoid Gyökeres or is Ndai good here. So you've got a Palmer problem. You need to move on. I'd be very tempted just to throw that to Saka, personally. Danny Conley says, hi James, what kind of role do you see Brennan Johnson playing at Spurs this season? Kudus is clearly favoured and seems tireless. Johnson clearly not as comfortable on the left either. Yeah, plug for Tottenham. Let's be out on Patreon in a couple of hours. Hopefully on the bench a lot. Sorry, that's how I've always felt. Stuart G says, get rid of Pedro on wildcard. Now Palmer's missing for a few game weeks. No, not necessarily. Chelsea still have plenty of other ways to create opportunities via Neto, Garnacho, Esteval, Enzo Fernandez playing a more advanced role. Romeo Lavia, I think, has been in training lately. And that is probably the ideal solution. I think the real beneficiary of this Palmer injury could be Enzo Fernandez. And that's a fantasy answer, by the way. So no, I have João Pedro. No thoughts of moving that on the money. If I owned, I'd be keeping. Very quickly, you land yourself in a scenario where Chelsea got them brilliant fixtures, 9, 11, 12, and you've got no coverage of it. He'd be sticking for me, mate. John Bright says, is it worth taking a -4 to take out Watkins and Madueke, or just do Watkins to Gyökeres as planned and deal with the second part of that next week? I mean, I wouldn't go Watkins to Gyökeres this week, mate. I wouldn't. I just wouldn't. I hear the frustrations. I would not be moving Watkins to Gyökeres this week. It would wait. And I think the want to do it this week is that, fucking hell, but he's playing Burnley. I don't want to do it next week. I get that as well. So can Gyökeres wait one more? Maybe. Yeah, Madueke is a move on, isn't it? It's clear that it's a definitive injury. But if you're not sure where you want to go and you want to wait a week, and it might mean a little change of structure or something, so maybe you can force Gyökeres and Watkins in together and then go Watkins to Bowen as an example in 8 maybe, then consider downgrading Madueke, mate. James Brennan says, hi James, thoughts on swinging against Haaland with Richarlison? Grim situation, my team would be a -12 for Haaland. How long do you expect Richie to stay in the team? Need him until João Pedro 9? Can't answer, mate. Solanke is back in training. Won't play tonight. Won't start Saturday. Beyond that, I've no idea, mate. To tell you Richarlison is safe beyond this weekend, I can't. Jay Mullet says, good morning, James. How do you like Richarlison as a pick for game with 6 wildcard? Looking at front 3 of Haaland, Gyökeres, Richarlison. Don't. I get it. Right in front of your face. Great. I don't. Sorry. I hope he absolutely smashes it. Many of you will know my opinion that he's not Tottenham's best number 9. And we don't even know what the impact of Mawani is on this, right? Lewis Reddington says, on wildcard 8, Verts to Foden or roll the free transfer. Already got 2 frees. No, I would punt that. I'd punt that. And Omar, you got the last one. Hey, James, if you're on wildcard, would Haaland and Salah draft be the ideal route for you? No. No, it would be just Haaland, not Salah with it as well. As I said, I'll go through a draft on the weekender with David on Friday, and he'll bring his own ideas as well. For those who have not got to in the chat, thank you for contributing. Apologies if you want to tag me on Twitter or Blue Sky at Planet FPL Pod. Please feel free to do so. I will happily answer your question at some point later today, or worst case tomorrow, but probably some point today. A reminder, if you want to support the show, it's www.patreon.com/planetfpl. Highly recommend yesterday's quiz with Ricky Saunders testing me on Tottenham knowledge bombs. Obscure stuff that I'm not meant to remember, but my brain is a little bit weird. It's good fun. It turns into a bit of a comedy, actually. That's available from Basic Plus tier. Plenty more on Patreon. If you've got any Patreon questions, also feel free to drop me a DM on Twitter. I'll happily answer any questions on that. For those on stream, please smash a like. It really does help spread the Planet FPL word. Sub to the channel. That would be really great as well. For audio listeners, a 5-star review goes a really long way. Remember, everyone, play it your way. Please be nice to each other. And for the benefit of those on the audio, cue music, please. Man child.